Oh, and there's also one more, and you brought that up, and I forgot to put it up there. I'm glad you said something. That's spiritual identity. Because usually when somebody's going through crisis, they doubt their relationship with God, or they think they're not worthy of God, or God doesn't love them. Just like that guy in D Block. I ministered to him for 2 or 3 months.
Is he still there?
No. When I told some of the other chaplains and other counselors that, they just were just, yeah. And I said, well, what would y'all say to them? And they said, we don't know. We probably said the same thing you said. I just couldn't deal. I mean, I'm not a doctor. I don't know how to handle that part, but I know how to handle that God loves him. You know, spiritual identity. Who am I in God? Why did God allow this to happen to me? Why do I need to believe in him anymore? If he's going to let this happen to me, if he's going to let me be abused like this, and what value should I live by? Again, do I really want him in my life because I've gone through these things? My boys, when their mama died, they kind of went into spiritual identity crisis, and they didn't go to church for quite some time. And they were in church active, very active. And when their mama died, they were not in church. They didn't go to church for years. And Daniel started going a little bit. And DC just, you know, he went to Tennessee, and then he come back and he just played on the road for years in that country band. And eventually the Lord started calling him back in, and he came back. And of course we know the product. We see it every Sunday now. But it was bad. When his mama died, it was bad. And again, why would God let my mama die? She's only 38 and a school teacher. Why would God let my mama die? And I kept saying, fellas, you got to trust God. And I remember when a month later is when that uncle died, that alcoholic uncle that I was talking about. A month later he died. And he wanted the boys to play. And of course, since then, this has been played a lot at Paul Funeral Home. But they said, we need a, it's really this was awesome, this part. I was walking through the house. My aunt said, I need a non-spiritual contemporary song to play at your uncle's funeral. And I said, well, what do you want? She says, I don't know. I said, what do you mean by non-spiritual? Tell me. She said, just something contemporary. And I said, what? She said, I don't know. And so I'm walking through the house, and DC and Daniel, they always had a bunch of girls in the house. And they were in there playing. And DC was playing the electric guitar, and Daniel was playing the acoustic. And they were playing Simple Man while they were singing. So I said, hey fellas, can y'all do that acoustic? And they started doing it acoustic and singing back and forth. And so I got my hand on the phone. I said, listen to this. And she started crying. She said, I want that. So I went over, walked over and told my daddy and all his brothers, said, we got a song. They said, what? I said, Simple Man. My daddy said, you're not playing rock and roll at my brother's funeral. I said, Daddy, this is not rock and roll, it's a ballad. It can be played in any genre. He says, you're still not playing it. I said, well, his wife said yes. He says, well, we say no. I said, well, will y'all at least listen? And so the boys started playing it, and my daddy and all his brothers started crying and said, please play that. Have an identity crisis. And so, but since then, DC and Daniel went in to play. They played Amazing Grace. They played the piano. And they played Simple Man. And when we walked out, DC and Daniel were in the car crying. I told them, I said, this will be therapy. I know your mama's only been dead for a month, but this will be therapy. They walked out and said, Dad, I don't know what you call therapy. Dad, it's not therapy. And DC did not go to another funeral for years. The next time he went to a funeral was Lenny Rice. He went and sang at Lenny Rice's. I can only imagine. And then Daniel went and got him. And so then they started coming back to church, and then they started really getting into it again. And now DC, you know, he's always got his ideas. He's really thinking about how, you know, all we can do to make things better and stuff. But I'd start with a spiritual identity. It was tough.
What do you do when your child says something like that to you? Because our
severe eczema. She just has a hard time with it, and she comes to us all the time saying, why did God do this to me? Why would he give this to me? I'm tired of it, I can't do it anymore.
I told Bethany, because Bethany was an abused child. She was the most severely abused child in 3 counties. When we got her, I mean, it was bad. And Bethany, as she was coming up, she would stop me. She'd just start talking. Just start talking. And she started talking about the abuse. I pulled over off I-95 and said, talk, girl, just talk. I let her talk. And then I'd say, I just want you to know something. You're special in God's eyes. I said, you're so special that God chose for you not only to be born in this family the normal way, God allowed us to go pick you. And Beverly used to tell her the other, Lisa and Daniel were born, they come from inside me. Yes, because she said, I don't come from your inside, I want to come from your inside. And she said, well, you did from my heart. And so we went through a lot with her, but every chance I got, I told her, you're special in God's eyes. I know you've been through problems, but what I have discovered, and your daughter will discover, is your biggest disappointments and your biggest scars will wind up being your biggest points of ministry. And losing my wife and my mom, I really got a chance to minister to people because I've been through that. And the boys now, DC and Daniel, have helped more people when they've gone through loss of their mother, things, because they said, why did God let this happen? And I told them that God has a bigger purpose. And Psalm 139 and 13 and 14, it says in the NIV, in my mother's womb, you knit me. You knit me in my mother's womb. If you're going to knit something, first you got to have a plan. And you got to have a pattern. And you got to have purpose. And so every last one of us here, is there anything in here any one of us would change if we could about us? You know, would you change your hair color? Would you give yourself some hair?
That's what we've been trying to help her understand. It's hard for her to deal
How old
with
is
it. She just turned 11. I'm not just dad. I'm the preacher too. So
I understand
what the preacher's supposed to tell. But we watched that movie about the girl that got bit by the shark and lost her arm.
That's awesome.
And after she saw that, she said, well, maybe God gave me this so I can help somebody one day. So she's starting to, but it's hard. I mean,
I had to tell
and I told her, I'm like, you'll use this to help somebody one day.
I had to reassure Bethany